She vanished in broad daylight from her own home, while her mother and 3 brothers were just steps away. On a sweltering June afternoon, 5-year-old Summer Wells went down to the basement to grab her favorite toy. Her mother was gardening just a few feet away. Her 3 older brothers were upstairs. But within minutes, Summer was gone, as if she had never existed. No screams, no surveillance footage, no footprints leading away, no signs of a struggle. Just a quiet wooden house buried deep in the woods of Beach Creek, silent and still in the most unsettling way. Police arrived. Search dogs were deployed. Neighbors combed the forest. But the only thing they found was an empty space that's lingered for 4 long years. The family says she was abducted. But inside that very family, no 2 stories match. And to this day, the scariest part isn't where Summer Wells might have gone. It's the chilling thought that maybe no one ever truly looked for her. Summer Moon Utah Wells, a name that sounds like a sad country song. She was born on February 4th, 2016, the youngest child of a family tucked deep in the remote hills of eastern Tennessee. A little blonde girl, sun-kissed skin, bright eyes, and an instinctive, unfiltered smile. People described Summer as wild and free. She ran barefoot through the yard, played with stray animals, danced in the sunshine. She wasn't the pink dress, red bow type of girl. She was the tree-climbing, wall-drawing, dirt-on-her-face kind. Her family lived in Beach Creek, a struggling pocket of Appalachia where faith and sorrow cling to the walls like dust. The Wells home sat at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by forest, no house number, no close neighbors. The kind of place where, if you screamed, no one would hear you. Her mother, Candace Bly, once said Summer was the only light in her life, a tiny girl who danced whenever country music played on the radio. But Candace had a history. Neighbors say she battled mental instability and had left the family more than once, only to return. Her father, Don Wells, worked in construction, quiet, weary-looking, with a strange kind of shadow behind his eyes. He had been arrested for domestic violence, but still swore he loved Summer more than anything in this world. Both parents had been on the radar of Child Protective Services, and at the time Summer disappeared, her 3 brothers had already been removed from the home for their safety. And yet, despite everything, Summer was a loved child, in a way that was messy, complicated, and hard to explain. Some said the Wells family was unfit to raise children. Others believed that because of their hardships, Summer needed even more protection. She lived in a world of contradictions, between freedom and chaos, between affection and neglect. 1 week before she vanished, Summer went to church with her mom and was given a children's Bible. The day before it all happened, she played in a swimming hole with friends, her laughter echoing under the late afternoon sun. And then, 24 hours later, she was gone. But there was one thing, something even her family didn't tell the truth about. And it started to unravel the moment police asked their very first question. June 15th, 2021, started like any other day. It was a Tuesday. Sunlight filtered through the thick trees surrounding the Wells home, and the kids were out of school. Candace, Summer's mother, took her daughter along with her grandmother to a hospital checkup for the older woman's knee. Afterward, they stopped by a store, then visited a friend's house. There, Summer was given a lollipop. The 3 returned home sometime in the early afternoon. A short video was recorded by Candace during the drive. Summer is seen leaning against a water jug in the bed of the pickup truck, her hair wet, her face relaxed and carefree. It would become the last known footage of her alive. And just hours later, she would vanish without a trace. Around 5:30 p.m., Candace said Summer was outside near the garden, playing with her grandmother while she tended the plants. A few minutes later, Summer followed her mother back inside the house. Candace told her, "Go downstairs and play with your toys." Summer went down. Candace shut the door. Everything seemed peaceful. But when Candace called for Summer a few minutes later, there was no answer. The basement door was slightly open. She rushed down, and the room was empty. Summer wasn't there. Candace ran outside, searching the yard, yelling for her daughter. Don, the father, was at a job site when the call came in. His response was immediate. "Call 911 right now." The first alert was issued at 6:30 p.m. Within the hour, Beach Creek was in full lockdown. Dozens of search teams, including K-9 units, police officers, and local volunteers, descended on the small wooden home at the end of the dirt road. But they found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no water disturbed, No discarded shoe. The dirt road leading to the house had a surveillance camera, but it showed nothing useful. Some people asked, how can a child disappear that fast? And that question was just the beginning of a long list of strange details that made this case so unsettling. As soon as the alert went out, the quiet Appalachian community was rocked. Within hours, rescue crews from multiple counties were on site. They searched on foot, on horseback, with drones, infrared cameras, and heat scanners, all looking for a 5-year-old girl, 40 pounds, blonde hair, wearing a pink shirt and gray shorts. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the FBI set up a mobile command center nearby. Within 24 hours, a child abduction task force was created, a rare move in a case involving a disappearance from inside a home. Tracking dogs followed Summer's scent from the basement, across a narrow dirt trail, and stopped near a bend called Ben Hill Road. Some believed the scent ended there because Summer had been placed in a vehicle, but that was only a theory. No one saw a car, no one heard an engine, and there were no public surveillance cameras in that area. Police called it the strangest case we've ever seen. Not a single clear physical clue. They searched the Wells home more than 11 times. Every inch of the basement, every wooden crate in the yard, every patch of dirt in the forest. Still nothing. Summer's 3 older brothers were taken into protective custody and interviewed separately. But even their stories didn't line up. One said Summer was going inside. Another claimed she was still playing with Grandma in the yard. Even the timeline started to blur. Was it 5:30 or 6 o'clock? Did Summer really come back into the house? Was she ever actually in the basement? Then came a detail that threw everything further into question. Candace's personal phone was still at home, which raised a chilling possibility. If the final video of Summer was filmed that same day, how could it have been recorded? Candace said she had used a different phone. But that opened another question. Why didn't she use her own? And who had the other device? The questions kept piling up. The data never quite added up. And while the media swarmed and social media lit up with wild theories, there was one quiet detail that made everyone stop cold. If Summer had been taken, why didn't the family dog bark? From the very first week after Summer's disappearance, the spotlight began to shift toward the family. Not because anyone accused them, but because their stories didn't line up. Candace, Summer's mother, originally said her daughter came in from the garden and went downstairs to play. But in a later interview, she claimed the last time she saw Summer was while folding laundry in the bedroom. Another time, she said Summer had been napping in her lap around 3 p.m. and just vanished sometime afterward. Don, Summer's father, initially said he was at work when his wife called to say their daughter was missing. But in a podcast appearance, he casually mentioned he had just gotten home and saw police already there. It's a difference of only minutes, but in missing child investigations, every minute matters. Then there was the story of the red Toyota Tacoma. Police announced they were looking for the driver of a red pickup with a white camper shell spotted in the area that afternoon. But the Wells family said they didn't remember seeing any strangers. Months later, Don added that maybe there was someone hanging around a few days earlier. The inconsistencies triggered a deeper question among investigators. Was someone hiding something? But it didn't stop there. Body language experts, invited onto national talk shows, began picking apart Candace's interviews. They pointed to her eyes darting away when she said, "Summer just played alone," and her fists clenching when asked, "Has anyone ever hurt your daughter?" Some viewers, especially those who saw her appearance on Dr. Phil, became convinced Candace was faking her grief. Others felt she was simply a broken mother, in shock, unsure how to process any of it. Then came another twist. It turned out that not only did Dawn have a criminal record, but Candace's mother, Summer's grandmother, had once reported her other daughter, Candace's sister, missing years ago. That child was never found. Was it just coincidence? Or a repeating pattern? Public opinion began to fracture. One side believed the Wells family were grieving victims. The other believed no one tells this many conflicting stories unless they're hiding something. And caught in the middle was the image of a little girl, now silent, unspoken for, with no one left to answer on her behalf. Not long after Summer vanished, a neighbor named Jody Sue Brown came forward. She lived just a few hundred yards away, tucked in the woods of Beach Creek, and her account was very different from what the family had said. Jody Sue claimed that on the afternoon in question, she heard the sound of an engine, revving, then cutting off, in a way that felt off. And it happened during the exact window when Candace claimed Summer was still inside the house. She also reported hearing strange footsteps and what sounded like an argument coming from the direction of the Wells cabin. But the most chilling detail, the family dogs never barked. In this mountainous region, barking is constant. One snapping twig could set off the whole pack. So why, that day, was there complete silence? Did Summer leave quietly? Or did the person who took her not feel like a stranger? Jody Sue's claims were never publicly confirmed by police. But from that point forward, the internet community went into overdrive, breaking down timelines, comparing witness statements, analyzing every second of the family's videos. And one haunting question began to rise. Did Summer ever actually make it home that afternoon? The hospital records from her grandmother's appointment were never released. The video of Summer in the truck, wet hair, leaning on the water jug, doesn't prove a time or date. Candace claimed it was filmed that day, but more and more people suspected it was from the day before. Because if Summer never came home, then everything that followed was hiding something far more serious. Meanwhile, cracks within the family began to show. Candace disappeared from social media. Dawn was arrested for violating probation, tied to a past domestic assault, following a violent incident that neighbors reported to police. From the outside, the Wells home looked unchanged. Weathered wood siding, a car parked beside it, and an old porch swing left untouched. But inside was a family unraveling, crumbling under media scrutiny, haunted by unanswered questions, and pierced by the absence of a little girl's laughter. And just when everyone thought the case had gone cold, a strange call came into the sheriff's office. Just 3 words. Check the basement. In the fall of 2021, just a few months after Summer vanished, the Hawkins County Sheriff's Office received an anonymous tip. A woman called and claimed she had seen a man hanging around near the Wells property in the days leading up to Summer's disappearance. He wasn't from the area. No one knew his name, but everyone remembered the same 2 things. A long scar down his left arm, and the unsettling way he stared at children. The woman said he was driving a deep red Toyota Tacoma, no front license plate. And what made this detail alarming was that it exactly matched the vehicle police had mentioned in their very first press release, a truck they later stopped talking about altogether. This man was reportedly seen parked in the woods near a bend in the road leading to the Wells house on the afternoon of June 14th, one day before Summer disappeared. Then he vanished. No one saw him again. Police released no further updates, but online sleuths started digging and uncovered something disturbing. There had been a man in the region who matched the description, a drifter with a history, a man who'd once been arrested for child luring almost a decade earlier in another state. Let's call him Eddie. He had no fixed address, worked on cars, and was known to camp out in the woods. In 2020, Eddie had been arrested in Kentucky for drug possession, then released on bond, and hadn't been heard from since. Still, there was no evidence linking Eddie to Summer. No DNA, no camera footage, no confirmed alibi, but also no solid proof. Police wouldn't confirm whether he was a suspect. They simply said, all credible leads have been investigated. But that led to public outrage. Why wasn't a possible suspect's image made public? Why wasn't there a warrant or a community alert? While the Wells family was being scrutinized for every word and facial expression, a man with a disturbing past, seen near a missing child's home, seemed to just disappear from the narrative. Some independent observers began to suspect the case had been steered in a certain direction from the very beginning. When a family has a troubled history, it's easy for law enforcement to assume the answer is inside that house. And when that assumption becomes the guiding theory, every other clue, no matter how strange, becomes background noise. But then came one more disturbing event. 3 weeks after that anonymous tip about the scarred man, Eddie allegedly tried to burn his truck in the woods. Fire crews were called to a small blaze in a forest nearly 40 miles from Beach Creek. They found a truck, scorched nearly to the frame. No plates, no one around. When photos leaked to the media, the public noticed the truck looked exactly like the red Tacoma described near the Wells home. According to old registration records, the vehicle once belonged to Eddie. But when pressed for answers, police simply said, "We're exploring all possibilities." No charges, No public images, no press conference, nothing about Eddie. And that's when the public's questions turned toward the investigation itself. Why wasn't a man with a criminal history seen at the right place, the right time, acting suspiciously, the focus of this investigation? Was it because Eddie wasn't family? Because there was no footage? Or was it because he didn't fit the easy narrative? More and more voices began saying the quiet part out loud. Profiling. When a poor, isolated family with a messy past becomes the subject of scrutiny, it's easy for people to assume something must be wrong with them. Meanwhile, outsiders, like Eddie, if they don't come with hard evidence, can slip through the cracks. A retired detective put it this way during a podcast. This is the kind of case where it's easy to chase the wrong thing, because your emotions take over. And if you believe the victim came from a chaotic home, you start thinking the answer must be buried in that chaos. But if that's true, what have we overlooked? Because while the media was analyzing every twitch of a grieving mother's face, Eddie, or someone like him, might still be out there. And if someone really did take Summer, then every day we look in the wrong direction. Is one more day, a door quietly closes. And just when the public thought Eddie was the last lead left, a forensic review of Candace's phone revealed a name no one had ever mentioned before. In late 2022, the FBI made one final push. They pulled every piece of digital data from the Wells family's devices, phones, iPads, old tablets, even the gaming consoles once used by Summer's brothers. Buried among thousands of messages, photos, and call logs, they found something strange. A single phone number had contacted Candace just hours before Summer was reported missing, a number never mentioned in any of her original statements. The call lasted less than a minute. Its IP address was traced to a town nearly 50 miles from Beach Creek. The contact name saved in Candace's phone, Eli, Trash Haul. Candace had never once mentioned anyone named Eli in interviews. But on an old Facebook profile, investigators found a man who worked in junk removal and had once posted a photo of himself near the Beach Creek woods in early June of that year. When questioned, Eli claimed he was just calling about an item left at the dump, but there was no record to verify that. His phone's GPS history showed he had been within 5 miles of the Wells home on June 15th, between 4:30 and 6:15 p.m., right in the window when Summer disappeared. So why didn't Candace mention this? When asked again later, she replied, "I forgot. He had nothing to do with it." But the public's trust was already starting to break. The idea of a random abduction now seemed less and less convincing. Had Summer been watched? Was this not a sudden event, but something planned? Some independent investigators began to float a darker theory. What if Summer wasn't alive by the time she was reported missing? If that were true, then the entire timeline, the basement, the dogs not barking, the peaceful afternoon, might have been a story. And then came a chilling observation. A single small detail in Summer's last known photo that no one had noticed for over a year. That image, Summer sitting in the back of the pickup truck, resting against a water jug, wet hair, eyes closed, had been shared everywhere. It had come to symbolize innocence and loss. But then, a Reddit user with medical expertise pointed out something that stopped people cold. The position of Summer's head and neck didn't look relaxed. They looked limp. Her posture suggested she wasn't resting, but unresponsive. The lollipop still clutched in her hand wasn't melting or sticky. Her eyes were shut, but not gently. Her body was curled up in a way that didn't feel natural. What had once been considered proof that Summer was alive that afternoon now raised a horrific question. Was she even conscious in that photo? Candace claimed the picture was taken after Summer played in a creek, but the lighting, the shadows, and the EXIF data hinted that the image might have been captured a day earlier, matching the growing theory that Summer may have never come home on June 15th. At the same time, Don, Summer's father, began to publicly distance himself from Candace on social media. He posted cryptic messages like, "I don't know what really happened, but I'm no longer sure I know the woman I once trusted." Candace disappeared from the internet. She stopped doing interviews. Some old friends claimed she was mentally unraveling, obsessed with religious shows about redemption and atonement. Every theory, from stranger abduction to accidental death to cover-up, was back on the table. And for the first time, the public began to admit, we may never know what really happened, The silence of those closest to the case had begun to outweigh any forensic evidence. The holes in the story weren't from a lack of data, but from the fear of facing a truth that might be too painful to name. Because there's one detail that's never been publicly released. A drawing, scribbled in crayon, found taped to the inside of the basement door. A child's sketch, and 4 haunting words written beneath it. She can't get out. Where silence becomes a scream no one hears. It's been over 4 years since Summer Wells disappeared. No arrests, no confession, no body ever found. Each year, the family still holds a prayer vigil, but fewer people come. Police say the investigation is still active, but they also admit they don't know where Summer is. A small wooden sign stands on the dirt road leading to the Wells home. It reads, "Bring Summer home," but the grass around it has grown tall, and the paint has faded with time. There was once hope that this was a kidnapping, that someone would call, demand ransom, or leave a clear clue. But nothing ever came. There was once belief that if enough people cared, justice would come. But the media moved on, and social media drowned in toxic theories. There were once voices, a mother's, a father's, neighbors, investigators, all saying they wanted to bring Summer home. But over time, those voices began to contradict each other, then falter, then fall silent. And slowly, the world began to realize a painful truth. Some children don't vanish because someone took them. They vanish because no one was truly looking. Summer Wells isn't a name printed in the headlines every week. She didn't have a nationwide campaign. No political pressure. She was a 5-year-old girl living in a forgotten place, inside a stigmatized family, in a voiceless community. And that's what makes her disappearance so easy to ignore. Maybe Summer slipped from this world quietly. But what's more devastating is the thought that maybe she cried for help and no one was listening.